I leaned in to get a better view. Prayed hard that the sofa would swallow her outright. I watched him carry her across the room until he placed her down near their son, smiled at the paper boat Friedrich had made, walked into the next room and shot himself. Friedrich was just a child, an 8-year-old, too naive to assume the worst. The boy looked up and saw me peering down on him. I was intrigued. He simply looked at me. No tears, no sadness, only traces of his mother's face and her hatred for me. That was the first and last that I would ever see of Mrs. Max Casper. Later that night I took care of everything, and I didn't hesitate when it came time to clear my name. Courts were driven by the whims of old aristocrats. They wouldn't dare expose one of their own. For it would mean exposing everyone. And I was right. All records of the night never appeared again. Three decades have passed since that affair took place. Friedrich belongs to me, and no one has known of his whereabouts. But I've been found out, and now conspiracy has set upon me. At some strange hour in the night, a horseman took a stolen part of me into the woods. Into a place where silent, broken houses barely stand, from out of which old hags can jump and snatch at a passing child. And so it began. I should be treated like a doll, a toy for whom they'd plan a party. Who after 30 years of being cast away was chosen once again to be poked and prodded. He had me in a photograph, like a lock of hair that he could pass from hand to hand, a prop for derailing my fate. The details of their trap were a formality, and for a profiteer with his experience, I'm sure he knew exactly what to do, allowing me to choose how all of this would end. They left plenty of space for me to wiggle in my trap. I was the perfect sucker, as the Americans would say. That night, before I left the butcher shop, they knew my paths, my means of travel. At 10 to 9, I felt as though a hair had been plucked from my head. How could I have known that profiteers inside the castle were meeting to discuss my fate? Scheming until no room for error was left. The evening turned on me, like one that I had almost forgotten 33 years ago. As I drove home, all I could think about was Friedrich. I didn't see her until I heard the rattling. She was a hag, a nuisance, fond of her position near the gates of a wealthy home. A roaming gargoyle in need of a leash. The meat that was so carefully and freshly wrapped had been soiled. I was running out of patience with the useless scarecrow. Three weeks after his mother died, Friedrich fell ill. Epileptic, blotchy. I could no longer stand to look at him. I told only my aunt about the boy, and without question she took him in. For months the child was bedridden, and even after he regained his strength, he wouldn't speak. With time, he grew to trust her, and she took care of him. Until I went to school, I visited them every week. One day, after a 6 months absence, I returned and she was dead. Young Friedrich, frightfully afraid of the outdoors, was unable to leave the house to call for help, and after months of hunger forced himself to eat away at my dead aunt. The next day I moved in, and since that time he's been in my possession. A grown man now, whose every need I serve. But it isn't so bad. I have needs of my own. That's when I saw the note. It said that I'd won a lottery, and that the master seamstress would come directly to my home to offer me an evening of work free of charge. I was a bit resistant to the thought of a visitor, but Friedrich had just been fed and would be asleep before she'd arrive. I was thrilled. I'd always wondered how my aunt's green cape would look on me. Some years ago, I even went so far as to have purchased 7 yards of velvet. But when I tried to sew the cape myself, I couldn't match the pattern. And after numerous failed attempts, it became clear to me that my arthritic hands would not allow me to complete the simple task. I realized that I could use that evening's unexpected stroke of luck to get it done. Where did I know her from? A face like hers was not that easy to forget. Perhaps I'd seen her on a stage or at the cinema. For all I knew, she could have been a trapeze girl, but I couldn't finger her. When we approached the portrait of my aunt, there wasn't much that I needed to say. She was clearly familiar with the pattern of the cape. The problem was that I felt something very odd about her gestures when she measured me. I'd never met a seamstress who could keep all of the numbers in her head. Katerina? No one had called me that in years. My head began to pound. Everything aggravated me. The meat began to smell, and soon the stench became unbearable. It was her house. It was another woman's curse, her child whom I'd taken, confined, and made my own. Friedrich should not have been so quiet, and quickly afterwards I understood what she had done as I slept. What's interesting is that she simply went about her business. The cape was perfect. It all seemed more than a little odd, and I kept thinking, why would a seamstress wear a delicate and sleeveless dress on this cold night? The evening was entirely absurd. I had forgotten the plans I'd made the night before to see the midnight carnival. Yet there it was, a fresh reminder to attend. And all at once, everything seemed a fortunate coincidence. Wolves at the table, and I wasn't about to disappoint them. Who was this man that I had murdered so many times before tonight? How many lifetimes must I share with him? I've been a prostitute to him, a countess and a queen, and every time he finds me in a ballroom dancing. What debt is left unpaid to him? I've taken care of everything, yet we're still crossing paths. In time, I became aware of what I'd done, and then decided on what seemed the simplest course of action. Besides, I thought it time that Friedrich lend a hand in matters where he could. In some ways, I was doing him a favor. I couldn't see the harm in it. I really didn't think he'd care where the meat came from. Later that night, I realized the body of a murdered man is not that easy to digest. Oh well, I had taken care of my mistakes before. There would no doubt be room behind the house for one more body. No one would know, and no one would want to know. A group of lawyers would confirm the deceased a guilty record. They'd mix him up with some of their bad debts and later tell a charming story to their wives about how they had solved their complex case. And to be sure, no one would lend an ear to the absurd ravings of a beggar, especially if they were words against a well-respected name like mine.